From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We should finish the job of fixing our broken immigration system. There's already a broad coalition across America that's behind this effort, from business leaders to faith leaders to law enforcement.
As President Obama calls on Congress to pass immigration reform, the number of deportations during Obama's time in office will soon surpass a record 2 million. Today, we speak with Congressman Luis Gutierrez. Earlier this month, he and 7 other members of Congress were arrested protesting Washington's failure on immigration. He's just out with his memoir called Still Dreaming: My Journey from the Barrio to Capitol Hill.
Push us, keep pushing us, and together we will deliver immigration reform this year. You need to guarantee that you give me and my colleagues and the Congress of the United States no place to hide. There are no acceptable excuses for failing to pass immigration reform this year, and no excuses will be accepted.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. J.P. Morgan Chase has reportedly reached a tentative deal with the Justice Department to pay $13 billion to settle claims over its sale of flawed mortgage-backed securities that were at the core of the financial crisis. The settlement includes $9 billion in fines and $4 billion in relief for suffering homeowners. The total represents more than half of J.P. Morgan's profits last year and would be the largest any single company has ever paid in a settlement with the Justice Department. The New York Times reports the deal resulted from close talks between J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon and Attorney General Eric Holder. After negotiations over the summer failed to produce a deal, the Justice Department was set to unveil civil charges against the bank at a news conference in late September. But unnamed sources said Dimon called a top Holder aide just 4 hours before the announcement requesting a meeting. Dimon and Holder spoke by phone 5 times over the past 2 weeks. The deal they reached Friday does not end the prospect of criminal charges for the bank. The Obama administration's planning to release more than $1.6 billion in military and economic aid to Pakistan. The aid was suspended following tensions over a number of incidents, including the U.S. raid in Pakistan that killed Osama bin Laden, a U.S. airstrike that killed 24 Pakistani soldiers, and ongoing U.S. drone strikes. The Pakistani Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, is in Washington this week to meet with President Obama. Secretary of State John Kerry welcomed him Sunday.
We're very anxious to have a series of high-level, important discussions over the course of the next few days. The Vice President, the President, tonight's dinner. We have a lot to talk about, and the relationship with Pakistan could not be more important. On its own, a democracy that is working hard to get its economy moving and deal with insurgency, and also important to the regional stability.
The meeting comes as Pakistan has confirmed to a United Nations official that at least 400 civilians have been killed by drone strikes in the past decade, plus an additional 200 victims deemed probable non-combatants. Ben Emerson, UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Counterterrorism, said Pakistani officials acknowledge the number is likely an underestimate. Emerson called on the United States to release data on civilians killed by drones, saying the CIA's role in the drone wars in Yemen and Pakistan has, quote, created an almost insurmountable obstacle to transparency. His report closely followed another one of Christoph Haynes, the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions, who said the use of drones undermines international security. The head of the Arab League has confirmed talks on Syria's civil war are scheduled for November 23rd in Geneva. Nabil El-Arabi spoke at a news conference Sunday.
I discussed the Syria file with Lakhdar Brahimi, and it was decided that the Geneva meeting would take place on November 23rd. And arrangements are being made to prepare for this conference. There are many arrangements to be made, and many difficulties must be overcome to make this conference possible.
UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi fueled confusion about the talks by denying during the same news conference that the date had been finalized. The talks came as a car bombing on the outskirts of Hama killed at least 37 people, most of them civilian. Meanwhile, in a lesser-told side of Syria's civil war, Muslim clerics have reportedly issued a fatwa, or religious ruling, allowing people to eat dogs, cats, and donkeys, as residents of rebel-held South Damascus face starvation conditions. The Financial Times reports areas including parts of the Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp have faced an almost total blockade of supplies since the summer, leaving some residents to subsist on leaves, animal feed, and the contents of garbage bins. Signs on pro-government checkpoints read, "Hunger or kneel." The area is just a short drive from where United Nations weapons inspectors are staying as they carry out an international mandate to destroy Syria's chemical arsenal. In Alberta, Canada, a train carrying crude oil and liquefied petroleum gas ran off the track Saturday, sparking a massive fire and forcing roughly 100 people to evacuate. 13 cars derailed, one exploded, at least 2 others also caught fire. It's the 3rd time a Canadian National Railways train carrying hazardous materials has derailed in the past month. A coordinator for Greenpeace Canada told Reuters, quote, "This is becoming the new normal, as we have movements of crude by rail skyrocketing at a time when the safety standards have not kept up." The commander of the U.S. Apache pilots who were caught on tape firing on civilians in Iraq in the infamous collateral murder video has spoken out about the incident for the first time. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Chris Wallach spoke to the Army Times ahead of the release this past Friday of The Fifth Estate, a feature film about WikiLeaks. Wallach defended the behavior of the pilots, which was seen around the world after WikiLeaks posted the video provided by whistleblower Chelsea Manning in 2010. The video, recorded in July of 2007, shows U.S. pilots mocking their victims, celebrating as they carry out an attack that killed 12 people below, including 2 Reuters employees. Reuters driver Saeed Shama survived an initial strike, but the pilots fired again when they saw people trying to load the wounded Shama into a van.
I got him. Should have a van in the middle of the road with about 12 to 15 bodies.
Oh, yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
Earlier this month, the pilot's commander, Chris Wallach, told the Army Times, quote, "In Iraq, you can't put pink gloves on Apache helicopter pilots and send them into the ultimate fighting ring and ask them to take a knee. These are attack pilots wearing gloves of steel, and they go into the ring throwing powerful punches of explosive steel. They're there to win, and they will win," he said. In the Maldives, police blocked voting in the country's rescheduled presidential election Saturday, claiming some candidates had not approved the voter rolls. Election officials said police surrounded their offices in the capital, preventing the vote. Former President and environmental advocate Mohamed Nasheed won the largest number of votes in an election earlier this month, but the Maldives Supreme Court rejected the results after another candidate claimed electoral fraud. International monitors called the election free and fair. On Sunday, Nasheed, who was ousted last year in what he described as a coup at gunpoint, called on the current president, Mohamed Wahid Hassan, to resign.
We believe that the only prudent way forward and a possible solution for the situation would be for today Dr. Wahid to resign and the Speaker of the Parliament to take over government until November 11th, which is just a few weeks, but for elections to be held under his tenure and not under the unelected or unrepresentative rule of Dr. Wahid.
President Obama is set to speak at the White House today about the technical issues that have plagued the rollout of his signature health care law. The administration claims some 476,000 applications have been filed through federal and state exchanges, but they've not said how many people have actually enrolled. Now the New York Times reports it may be weeks or even months before the cascade of glitches is resolved. Unnamed sources say the enrollment process is masking deeper issues and millions of lines of code may need to be rewritten. France has summoned its U.S. ambassador to explain reports based on documents leaked by Edward Snowden that show the National Security Agency accessed more than 70 million French phone records over a period of just 30 days. The report in Le Monde newspaper was co-authored by former Guardian journalist Glenn Greenwald. It reveals how the U.S. swept up text messages containing certain keywords and automatically recorded conversations that used certain numbers. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius called the tactics totally unacceptable. Earlier reports have unveiled similar programs in Britain and Germany. Meanwhile, a report in the German magazine Der Spiegel, based on Snowden's leaks and co-authored by Laura Poitras, reveals the NSA has been systematically spying on the Mexican government for years. A May 2010 report shows the NSA hacked into an email server used by then-President Calderón and his cabinet members as part of an operation dubbed Flat Liquid. Last month, current Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto summoned the U.S. ambassador following reports the NSA had monitored his communications while he was still a candidate. Anti-austerity protests are continuing to sweep across Europe. In Madrid, Spain last week, a group of scientists, some wearing black, gathered to hold a moment of silence for the research they say has been killed by budget cuts. In Portugal, tens of thousands protested Saturday in the cities of Lisbon and Porto against the government's plans to extend austerity cuts in next year's budget. And in Rome, Italy, tens of thousands took to the streets Saturday, a day after transportation, education, and healthcare workers launched a 24-hour nationwide strike against continued austerity cuts in Italy's new budget. A union spokesperson discussed Friday's strike.
We are saying stop the austerity measures that only hurt the weakest, the workers, the pensioners, the unemployed, those who are self-employed. They don't touch in the slightest way the strong, those that have grown throughout this crisis and caused it.
In Montenegro, a small group of LGBT people held the first-ever gay pride march in the country's capital, Podgorica, despite being outnumbered 10-1 by violent anti-gay extremists. Some 2,000 police officers guarded the group of 150 marchers as they braved an anti-gay mob that hurled firebombs and rocks. An organizer said, quote, "As of today, gay people are no longer invisible in Montenegro." Meanwhile, same-sex couples in New Jersey have begun exchanging wedding vows for the first time. On Friday, New Jersey Supreme Court rejected a request by Republican Governor Chris Christie to halt the marriages pending an appeal. The weddings began just after midnight. Newark Mayor Cory Booker, who was recently elected to the U.S. Senate, officiated some of the state's first ceremonies at Newark City Hall. South Brunswick resident Marcia Shapiro explained why she and her wife wanted to be among the first.
We've been wanting to get married for a long time. We've been together over 24 years. We were religiously married over 21 years ago. We have 4 children, 1 grandchild, and another one on the way. It's time that we get married.
Last week, an official in western North Carolina accepted 10 marriage license applications from same-sex couples, despite a North Carolina state constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. Buncombe County Register of Deeds Drew Reisinger said he would ask North Carolina's Attorney General to allow the marriages. He's the first deeds registrar in the South to accept same-sex marriage licenses. And the teenage girl whose rape in Maryville, Missouri, sparked a nationwide outcry after the charges were dropped against her accused rapist, a well-connected high school football player, has written about the experience online. Daisy Coleman was 14 when she says she was raped by Matthew Barnett at a gathering of high school athletes. In a post on the blog XO Jane, Daisy describes how on that night in 2012 she was told to drink from a tall shot glass, quote, "Then it was like I fell into a dark abyss," Daisy writes. "That's all I could ever remember from that night." Daisy then describes how she was dropped in the snow outside her house in 22-degree weather, where her mother found her in the morning. She describes the outcome of the rape kit when doctors, quote, verified that our nightmares were real. And she recalls how after reporting the rape, she was, quote, suspended from the cheerleading squad, and people told me that I was asking for it and would get what was coming. Online, people urged her to kill herself, which she tried to do twice. Daisy continues, "I also refuse to be a victim of cruelty any longer. This is why I'm saying my name. This is why I'm not shutting up." Daisy's case went viral after an article in the Kansas City Star and a video by the hacker group Anonymous. Last week, the prosecutor who dropped the charges said he's asking for a court-appointed special prosecutor to review the case. Daisy called that announcement, quote, a victory, not just for me, but for every girl. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.